The movie kicks off by introducing Jack Carter, a tough mafia member who violently confronts a slot machine addict. Alongside his friend Connie, they ruthlessly collect debts from gangsters. However, Jack decides to return to his hometown upon hearing news of his brother Richard's death in a drunk driving accident. Suspicious of the circumstances, Jack sets out to investigate. However, Connie opposes Jack's departure as he's indispensable to their boss. Nonetheless, Jack is determined to go back home. After a lengthy train journey from Las Vegas, Jack arrives in Seattle for Richard's funeral. However, he receives a cold reception from Richard's wife, Gloria. Despite the tension, Gloria permits Jack to join in the funeral prayers for Richard. After the funeral prayers, Jack approaches Richard's friend, Eddie, hoping to uncover any clues about Richard's death. Eddie insists that Richard was a good guy and unlikely to have enemies in the criminal world. Next, Jack tries to comfort his niece Doreen, who is smoking at the funeral. When Jack wants to console her, she brushes him off, feeling estranged as he was absent for most of her life. As Jack prepares to leave, he notices a woman and questions her about Richard's death, but the woman refuses to give any information. Later, the mourners gather at Gloria's house. There, Jack persists in discussing Richard's suspicious death, much to Gloria's discomfort. She eventually asks him to stop because others feel disturbed. Jack then leaves the house and joins Doreen in smoking, who is trying to relieve her sadness. At first, Doreen is wary of Jack's presence, fearing he might be involved in the mafia. However, she starts to see another side of her uncle when he shows concern for her father's death. Doreen shares that her father wasn't an alcoholic, hinting that he might have been coerced into drinking before the accident. Despite the pain, she tries to come to terms with her loss. As evening approaches, Jack re-enters the house and questions Gloria about any arguments she had with Richard before his death. Gloria feels defensive, believing she's being blamed for her husband's demise. Despite her initial hesitation, she senses Jack's genuine care for Richard, despite his absence for over 5 years. Later that night, Jack receives a call from his furious boss in Las Vegas, unhappy with his sudden departure. Shortly after, Connie contacts him, urging him to return to Las Vegas immediately. Jack insists he has pressing matters to deal with despite Connie's annoyance, who threatens to expose Jack's affair with their boss's girlfriend, Audrey. Despite the threat, Jack remains calm and chooses to investigate his younger brother's death. Shortly after, he heads to the bar where Richard worked and meets the owner, Cliff, who apologizes for missing the funeral. Jack then inquires about Richard's behavior at work, to which Cliff asserts Richard was a good person and worker. Cliff feels offended by Jack's questions about the accident that claimed Richard's life, but Jack remains undeterred. Once Cliff calms down, Jack requests the CCTV footage, which Cliff readily provides to dispel any suspicion. Before leaving, Cliff discusses a woman named Geraldine, who turns out to be Richard's mistress, surprising Jack but refocusing him on the investigation. This time, Jack pays a visit to Cyrus, an old friend who's also a mafia member. He's surprised to find Cyrus chatting with Geraldine, the suspicious woman from Richard's funeral. However, Jack decides not to question her directly and instead seeks information from Cyrus. However, Cyrus avoids Jack's questions and boasts about his new business, looking down on Jack's success. Annoyed, Jack leaves the place, but is stopped by one of Cyrus's henchmen. After beating up Cyrus's henchmen, Jack follows Cyrus to a golf course, where he's selling a woman to someone named Jeremy. Upon seeing the situation, Jack swiftly approaches Jeremy and brings up the topic of Richard's death. Initially hesitant, Jeremy caves under Jack's intimidating demeanor and agrees to talk. As they stroll around the golf course, Jack probes about Cyrus, but Jeremy refuses to answer. When Jack threatens him, Jeremy reluctantly reveals that Cyrus is the one who sells women to his company to serve investors. After this revelation, Jeremy urges Jack to leave. Later, Jeremy angrily contacts Cyrus, confirming Jack's suspicions. From this, Jack is very sure that they are indeed involved in Richard's murder, and it is proven when Jeremy orders Cyrus to get rid of Jack as soon as possible. That night, Jack calls Audrey to check on her. Tired of their secret relationship, Jack promises that when he returns to Las Vegas later, he will take Audrey with him. However, Audrey rejects him. Jack then visits Gloria, who begins to open up to him. While strolling in the park, Gloria shares her stress since Richard's passing. She mentions Doreen's withdrawal and aimless outings since her father's death. During their conversation, Gloria brings up Jack's sudden interest in finding Richard's killer, despite his previous disinterest. Jack explains that he's trying to make amends to Richard and his family because blood ties are enduring. Returning to his hotel, Jack reviews the CCTV footage from Cliff. In the video, he spots Richard conversing with Geraldine, with Eddie nearby. Jack immediately seeks out Eddie to ask for Geraldine's address. Upon confronting Geraldine, Jack presses her about the events captured on the CCTV footage, which coincided with Richard's accident. After much pressure, Geraldine confesses. She reveals her affair with Richard and how he wanted her to flee the city due to marital issues. Because Geraldine refused, Richard turned to alcohol, leading to his fatal crash. Hearing Geraldine's admission leaves Jack speechless, yet he remains suspicious of Richard's death. Determined to dig deeper, he's stopped by an old gangster friend who offers a plane ticket, seemingly to remove him from the investigation. Furious, Jack refuses, sparking a heated altercation that ends with the gangster escaping and Jack commandeering a vehicle, leading to a pursuit. After apprehending the gangster, Jack demands to know who sent him, and it turns out the person who gave the ticket is Cliff. Upon learning this, Jack confronts Cliff with a gun, demanding answers. Cliff claims he doesn't know anything because he was just following orders from Cyrus. Rushing to Cyrus, Jack accuses him of his brother's murder. However, Cyrus denies involvement, citing no previous issues with Richard and focusing solely on his business. He warns Jack against reckless accusations, hinting Richard's death may indeed have been accidental. Feeling at a dead end, Jack crosses paths with Doreen by chance, inviting her to dinner. As they bond, Jack grows closer to his niece, sharing openly about his investigations. When it's late at night, Jack escorts Doreen to her home. But Jack senses an intruder at Doreen's home, urging her to stay in the car. Investigating inside, Jack is attacked but unable to apprehend the assailant. He calls the police and an ambulance for Gloria, who was injured in the head. Concerned for Jack's safety, Gloria urges him to return to Las Vegas, fearing further complications from his investigation into Richard's death. After returning to his hotel, Jack finds Doreen seeking to stay there instead of going to her grandmother's, despite Gloria's invitation. While Doreen sleeps, Jack reviews the CCTV footage again, spotting Geraldine giving Richard a CD. Determined to find out its contents, he confronts Geraldine. However, instead of answering, Geraldine takes Jack to Jeremy's office. There, Jeremy explains how Cyrus manipulated him with a compromising video, coercing him into funding Cyrus's operations. He divulges details of Richard's fatal encounter with Cyrus's henchmen, proposing an alliance with Jack to take down Cyrus. However, Jack doesn't immediately reject it and chooses to work alone. Jack then continues his investigation, but suddenly his boss calls from Las Vegas. It turns out he already knows that Jack has a secret relationship with Audrey. Jack's boss threatens Audrey's life if Jack doesn't return to Las Vegas, but Jack defiantly warns his boss that any harm to Audrey will be met with brutal retaliation. Undeterred, Jack heads to Gloria's house, which is still cordoned off by police tape. Jack immediately searches for the CD given by Geraldine to Richard. After searching every corner of the room, it turns out the CD is hidden inside the piggy bank. Upon watching the CD, Jack discovers footage of Doreen being harassed by Eddie. Concerned, he rushes back to comfort his niece. When he is in the elevator, he is approached by Connie and his henchmen. They are sent to kill Jack. But before they brawl, they wait for the person in the elevator to exit first. As soon as the doors open, a fight ensues, with Jack swiftly overpowering them. Afterwards, he finds Doreen on the rooftop, where she reveals her trauma from the harassment and guilt over her father's death, believing it stemmed from his desire for revenge. Jack consoles her and, filled with resolve, leaves to confront Eddie and Cyrus for Doreen's sake. Suddenly, Jack receives a voice message from Geraldine, revealing that Richard planned to report Eddie and Cyrus to the police, leading them to conspire against him. Rushing to Geraldine's house, Jack finds her dead, suspecting Eddie's involvement. He confronts Eddie at Cliff's bar, intimidating him until Eddie confesses to harassing Doreen. Despite Eddie's pleas, Jack's anger boils over until he beats Eddie to death. As Jack leaves, he's pursued by Connie and his thugs. In a high-speed chase, Jack outmaneuvers them, eliminating Connie and his crew. He then heads to Jeremy's party, where he confronts Cyrus about Richard's death. However, Cyrus continues to deny and says that all of this is Jeremy's fault, even though it is clear that he himself would sell the video of Doreen's harassment. Enraged, Jack unleashes his anger on Cyrus, but his injuries weaken him, leading to defeat. However, Cyrus's admission to Richard's murder fuels Jack's determination. Summoning strength from memories of Richard and Doreen, Jack rises and approaches Cyrus, who is partying. Then, Jack brutally beats Cyrus, ending his life. Afterwards, Jack coerces Jeremy into revealing the murder's location. Once there, Jack subjects Jeremy to the same mistreatment Richard endured. Eventually, Jeremy confesses his involvement in Richard's death, driven by fear of Richard reporting him to the police. After hearing Jeremy's confessions, Jack aims his gun but ultimately decides to spare him. Despite Jeremy's involvement in Richard's death, Jack sees remorse and offers him a second chance. Shortly after, Jack prepares to leave the city. However, as he walks towards his car, he is shocked to see Cliff stealing the CD containing the video of Doreen's harassment. Cliff claims he wants to destroy the CD, but Jack doesn't believe it. As a result, Jack points his gun and shoots him. In the film's closing scene, Jack visits Richard's grave and bids farewell to Doreen. With his troubles resolved, Jack heads to Las Vegas to start afresh. Moral lesson from the story: never underestimate the power of a piggy bank. It might just hold the key to solving all your problems. And when life throws you into an elevator with trouble, just make sure you're the last one standing when the doors open.